The big things that we can do is to cut back on meat and dairy. Overwhelmingly, wherever you are in the world, that's the big message. The problem is that gets tricky. If you're in Mongolia, that's a bit hard to follow because not many plants grow in Mongolia. But in Britain, we could grow a lot more plants and less dairy. And certainly if you want to eat meat, it should be grass-fed, whereas at the moment in Britain, about 40 or 50% of the cereals that we grow are then fed down the throats of animals. This is incredibly inefficient. We also say you can eat fish more sustainably if you want to eat fish, and you can eat a lot more fruit and vegetables as long as they are produced in a sustainable way. In other words, in ways that are good for the land, good for the soil, good for water conservation.
You also make the recommendation that we should cut down on processed foods. Most people know about cutting down on junk foods in terms of their health, but what's wrong with those in terms of the environment?
It's got a lot to do with the environment because the environment is being mined, is being used to produce those things. Sometimes you can have more efficiencies if you have a factory processed food, but actually, overwhelmingly, that's not the case. It's better if you have as raw and as simple a diet as possible. Not that that means everyone might want to eat that, but that is what would be better for us for our health and better for the environment.
You mentioned a couple of hotspots, soya and palm. We know about deforestation and how often those commodity crops are grown in areas that are being deforested. But what's the issue with health?
One of the central uses of palm is in processed foods. It's firstly hidden fat in foods. Consumers often don't know how much fat there is in food, and there is an increasing use of palm oil and cutting down of forests for palm oil, and the same is also true of soy. Soy is used as a filler and a bonder in processed foods, but its environmental impact is that it's increasingly being used and grown on what was formerly rainforest. So there is a difficulty in processed foods that while we want to cut back on our fat, very often we don't know the foods that are from very delicate ecological spots in the world, like soy and palm, that we could improve the impact of our diet by cutting out.
Should consumers be doing this? Can they do it on their own?
I don't think consumers on their own can do this. Informed consumers who are bothered about the environment and health are beginning to do this anyway. What this report is about is saying, government, you've got to set the framework. You've got to get a grip of this. The good news is last year, the government, in a report called Food Matters, did begin to edge into this territory. And we're saying, go further, faster now. Here we are in Copenhagen. Now is the time to do it.
There must have been quite a lot of tension over these recommendations, because it means what happens to British farmers, for instance.
We think it has good news for farming. Farming has to change, yes, definitely. It would certainly alter how dairy farmers operate, how meat farmers operate. It may mean over time, but we think that will happen anyway for climate change reasons and probably energy, oil reasons as well. It'll mean a restructuring of where meat is grown. If you want to eat meat, it is better that it isn't grain-fed. On that we are clear. But this can't just be Britain that sorts this out, although I think Britain's got room to make a lead on that, and that's what this report is doing. It's saying we, a rich country, do not need to compartmentalise public health nutrition from environment. We must start putting them together. This is the era of ecological public health. That's what the Copenhagen talks ought to be about.